He lost his wife years ago and swore he'd never love again. But when his daughter tried to fix her father's lonely heart, she never expected the woman she'd choose would change all their lives forever. This is A Wife for Her Billionaire Dad, a story of second chances, unexpected love, and the courage to open your heart again. The morning light poured through the wide windows of the Chase mansion, sliding over marble floors and whispering across photographs frozen in time. 15 years had passed, yet Tyler Chase still kept his late wife's image framed in the hallway, her smile the first thing he saw every morning. The house was immaculate, but too still, the kind of silence that didn't soothe, only reminded. Kyla Chase stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching her father at the breakfast table. He looked the same as always. Crisp shirt, neatly combed hair streaked with silver at the edges, his calm blue eyes reading the paper as if the world beyond those pages didn't exist. He was the picture of control, of peace even, but she knew better. She'd grown up studying that stillness. It wasn't peace. It was loneliness dressed up in discipline. "Morning, Dad," she said softly, taking the seat across from him. He glanced up, a faint smile breaking through. "Morning, sweetheart. How's my soon-to-be bride doing?" Kyla laughed lightly, trying not to lose my mind. Mom would have loved the chaos, though. At that, his smile faltered just for a second. He folded the newspaper, setting it aside. "She would have been proud of you. I know I am." The warmth in his voice melted her heart, but beneath it lay the same ache she'd been trying for years to fix. He never remarried, never even dated. He told everyone he didn't have time, but Kyla knew the truth. He'd simply decided love died the day her mother did. "Dad," she began carefully, "you ever think about, maybe going out again, meeting someone?" Tyler chuckled, shaking his head. "Kyla, I'm too old for that. Besides, I had my once-in-a-lifetime love. You're all I need." She tried to smile, but the words stung. She was his daughter, not his companion, and soon she'd have a life of her own. A husband, a new home, a new rhythm. The thought of leaving him behind in this echoing house made her chest tighten. Later that day, she met her best friend Ruby Wesley for coffee at a small Dallas cafe. Ruby, with her luminous brown skin and easy smile, listened while Kyla vented about her dad's stubborn heart. "He still says he's fine being alone," Kyla said, stirring her latte aggressively. "He won't even consider dating." Ruby tilted her head. "So what's the plan? Gonna sign him up for some billionaire dating app?" Kyla sighed. "I wish. He'd delete it before the profile picture loaded." Ruby chuckled. "You could just find him someone yourself." Kyla's spoon froze mid-stir. "You're joking, but..." She looked up, eyes gleaming with sudden inspiration. "Actually, maybe that's not a bad idea." Ruby blinked. "Wait, what?" Kyla leaned closer, whispering, "Your mom, Juliana. She's single, right?" Ruby nodded slowly. "Yeah, she's been single forever. But my mom's not the type to..." "She's perfect," Kyla interrupted, excitement rising. "Smart, kind, beautiful, and strong. Dad would like her. I just know it." Ruby laughed in disbelief. "Kyla, are you seriously trying to hook up my mom with your dad?" "Not hook up," Kyla corrected, grinning. "Just introduce them. Casually. I'll make it look natural." Ruby groaned, but her smile betrayed amusement. "You're impossible." Kyla's eyes softened. "Ruby, I just don't want him to be alone. After I'm married, he'll have no one here. The house already feels like a museum." Ruby sighed, her heart tugged by her friend's sincerity. "All right. But if my mom finds out we're scheming, you're taking the blame." Kyla grinned. "Deal." A week later, the Chase mansion came alive with laughter, clinking glasses and the soft hum of live music. It was Kyla's 24th birthday, an intimate party filled with close friends, family, and a few of her father's business associates. Tyler, dressed in a tailored navy suit, moved through the crowd with his usual grace. Polite smiles, firm handshakes, but a noticeable distance from the joy around him. Ruby arrived first, radiant in an emerald dress, and behind her came her mother, Juliana Wesley. Tyler turned when he heard Kyla's cheerful voice greeting them. And for the first time in years, something shifted behind his composed exterior. Juliana was elegance embodied, soft, natural curls brushing her shoulders, her skin glowing under the golden chandelier light, her eyes warm but reserved. "Dad, this is Ruby's mom, Juliana," Kyla said, smiling innocently. Tyler offered his hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Ms. Wesley." Juliana's handshake was gentle but steady. "The pleasure's mine, Mr. Chase. Kyla's told us so much about you." Kyla watched them from the corner of her eye as conversation bloomed naturally. Polite laughter, genuine curiosity. Tyler asked about her culinary work. Juliana complimented the home's design. When he smiled at one of her jokes, Kyla felt a flicker of triumph. Later, as the evening wound down, she caught her father glancing toward Juliana as the guests chatted around the dessert table. It was subtle but undeniable, the kind of look she hadn't seen in years. A small, startled interest. When the guests finally left, Kyla lingered beside him by the fireplace. "She's nice, right?" Tyler looked up, feigning indifference. "Juliana?" "Yes, very kind woman." "And funny," Kyla added. He smiled faintly. "Yes, she reminds me of someone." His gaze lingered on the photo of his late wife for a moment, then drifted away. "Anyway, you should get some rest, birthday girl." Kyla hid her smile. The seed was planted. A few days later, Kyla called Ruby. "Round 2. "Oh no," Ruby groaned into the phone. "What now?" "I'm inviting you both for dinner. No caterers. I'll say I want to cook myself, but I'll need your mom's help. It'll be perfect." Ruby laughed. "Perfectly crazy. Trust me." And so, on a warm Friday evening, the plan came alive. Juliana arrived wearing a simple cream blouse and jeans, her curls tied back as she joined Kyla in the expansive kitchen. "You sure you don't want your chef handling this, dear?" she asked with a soft chuckle. "Not tonight," Kyla said. "I want this to feel family." As the evening unfolded, laughter filled the kitchen. Juliana moved gracefully as she stirred sauces and chopped vegetables, her movements practiced and effortless. She told stories about cooking with her late grandmother, about teaching culinary students to find comfort in food. Kyla listened with genuine admiration. No wonder Ruby adored her mother. When Tyler came home from work, the scent of garlic and herbs filled the air. He paused at the doorway, surprised. "What's this?" "Dinner," Kyla said proudly. "Home cooked. No staff tonight." Tyler smiled, intrigued. "Is that so?" At dinner, the table gleamed under soft lighting. The dishes looked exquisite. Roasted chicken, fresh greens, and a peach cobbler that smelled like heaven. Tyler took a bite and froze. "This tastes different." Juliana flushed slightly. "Different bad or different good?" He looked up, eyes bright with appreciation. "Different amazing. Who cooked this?" Kyla grinned. Juliana and Ruby helped. Tyler turned to Juliana, his voice warm. "You have real talent, Ms. Wesley." Juliana smiled modestly. "Cooking's my comfort language. I'm glad you like it." Halfway through dinner, Kyla's phone buzzed. She glanced at it dramatically. "Oh, Ruby, can you come upstairs with me for a second? I need help with something." Ruby caught the mischievous glint in her friend's eye. "Sure," she said, suppressing a smile. Within seconds, the two young women disappeared, leaving Tyler and Juliana alone at the table. The silence was brief but comfortable. "So," Juliana began, "Kyla tells me you built your company from scratch. That must have taken a lot of patience." "It did," Tyler said, relaxing into conversation. "Patience. And distractions. After my wife passed, work became my way of breathing." Juliana's eyes softened. "I understand that. I raised Ruby alone after her father left. Work was how I kept from falling apart." He studied her face for a long moment. There was no pity in his gaze, only quiet recognition. Two people who had carried their pain alone for far too long. "You must be proud," he said gently. "Ruby's a remarkable young woman." Juliana smiled wistfully. "She saved me. I thought I was teaching her how to live. Turns out she was teaching me." They talked for what felt like hours, about family, about forgiveness, about learning to let go of guilt. Juliana's laughter filled the space between their words, softening the sharp edges of grief that had long defined Tyler's world. When Kyla and Ruby finally returned, they found their parents to be smiling like old friends. As the evening ended, Juliana thanked him for the meal and stood at the doorway, her shawl draped lightly over her shoulders. "It was lovely, Mr. Chase." "Tyler," he corrected gently. "Please, call me Tyler." She hesitated, then smiled. "Good night, Tyler." He watched her walk to her car, her silhouette framed by the porch light, graceful and calm. Something inside him stirred, something he'd long believed was gone forever. When the door closed, Kyla leaned against the stairway railing, a knowing grin on her face. "So," she said casually, "what did you think?" Tyler exhaled slowly, almost smiling. "She's different, easy to talk to. It's been a long time since I had a dinner like that." Kyla's heart leapt, but she hid it behind a yawn. "I'm glad you liked it, Dad." He nodded, glancing back at the empty hallway. "You know, this house feels warmer tonight." Later, when the lights dimmed and Kyla went to bed, Tyler remained by the living room window. The moonlight spilled over the framed photos of his past, his wife, his little girl, their laughter frozen in time. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Maybe Kyla's right. Maybe it's time to stop being alone." The house, for the first time in years, didn't feel like a mausoleum. It felt like the beginning of something, fragile, uncertain, but alive. And somewhere across town, Juliana Wesley sat on her porch, sipping tea, thinking of the man with kind blue eyes who made her laugh again. Neither of them knew what the next dinner would bring, but for the first time in a very long time, both hearts felt the faint, familiar pulse of possibility. The following days moved slowly inside the Chase mansion. Work came and went, meetings blurred together, but for the first time in years, Tyler Chase found himself distracted, not by deadlines, but by a woman's laughter echoing in memory. Every time he passed the dining room, he remembered her smile across the candlelight, her soft voice as she spoke about raising her daughter alone. He tried to dismiss it, tried to focus on business reports and construction plans, but Juliana Wesley lingered like a melody that refused to fade. That evening, as he stood by the window overlooking the Dallas skyline, Kyla found him unusually quiet. She noticed the untouched glass of scotch in his hand and the faraway look in his eyes. "You okay, Dad?" she asked gently. He nodded, clearing his throat. "Oh. Yes. Just thinking." Kyla smiled knowingly. "About work?" He hesitated. "Something like that." She studied him, trying to hide her satisfaction. For days, she had been waiting for this moment, the shift in his voice, the tiny crack in his composure. "So, she began casually. "I was thinking of inviting Ruby and her mom again sometime. You know, before the wedding gets too crazy." Tyler turned from the window, his expression unreadable. "That's a good idea. They were good company." "Yeah, they were," Kyla said, forcing her tone to stay even. "Should I call Ruby and ask when they're free?" Tyler nodded slowly. "Actually, why don't I do that? I owe them a proper dinner anyway." Kyla's heart nearly leapt out of her chest, but she kept her face neutral. "Sure, Dad. That'd be nice." When she told Ruby the next day, her friend nearly choked on her coffee. "He what?" Ruby asked, wide-eyed. "He asked me to invite you and your mom for dinner," Kyla said, grinning. "At his request." Ruby blinked. "This is insane. My mom's going to think he's just being polite." "That's what makes it perfect," Kyla said. "He wants to see her, even if he doesn't know it yet." The evening arrived quietly, carrying with it the soft glow of twilight over the city. The mansion, though familiar, looked different that night. The staff had been given the evening off, a decision that had surprised everyone, especially Kyla. When she asked him why, Tyler simply said, "I'll handle it myself." He spent the afternoon walking through the kitchen, checking the table settings, even arranging fresh white roses in the center vase. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cared about small details like that. By 6 o'clock, the house smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. The air was expectant, though he couldn't explain why. When Juliana arrived with Ruby, Tyler's breath caught. She wasn't dressed in anything extravagant, just a soft cream dress that flowed gracefully around her figure, her curls pinned loosely back, a gold necklace glinting at her collarbone. But there was something about her simplicity that disarmed him completely. "Good evening," she greeted, her voice warm, carrying that quiet poise he remembered. Tyler smiled, genuine and unforced. "I'm glad you could come." Ruby and Kyla exchanged secret glances as they followed them inside. Dinner began with laughter. The atmosphere was lighter this time, less formal, more personal. Tyler poured wine, asking about Juliana's work at the culinary school. She told stories about her students, her eyes lighting up when she described their triumphs. He listened attentively, captivated by her passion. Ruby and Kyla occasionally chimed in, teasing each other like sisters. There was an ease in the air, the kind that happens only when everyone feels at home. At one point, Juliana turned to Tyler and asked, "Do you ever cook?" He chuckled. "Only when I want to set off the smoke alarms." She laughed, shaking her head. "That bad? Let's just say I know my strengths, and they don't involve stoves." The table erupted in laughter. Even Kyla, who had seen her father stoic through business storms, couldn't believe how relaxed he looked now. Dinner flowed into dessert, and the two young women quietly slipped into the living room, leaving the adults alone again. Juliana rested her hands on the tablecloth, glancing around the elegant dining room. "Your home is beautiful. It must be full of memories." Tyler's expression softened. "It is." The room grew quieter, the air between them humming with something gentle but powerful. When the evening ended, Tyler walked her to her car. The driveway glowed with soft lantern light, the air cool and still. He hesitated beside her car door. "Thank you for coming, Juliana. I don't remember the last time this house felt this alive." She looked up at him, her eyes soft. "You have a beautiful home, Tyler. It just needed laughter again." They stood there a moment too long before she opened her door. "Good night," she said. "Good night," he replied, his voice lower than usual. He watched her taillights fade down the long driveway, an ache of longing pressing gently against his chest. The next afternoon, he found himself in the driver's seat, steering through the busy Dallas streets toward the Culinary Institute where Juliana worked. He told himself it was just to thank her again, a small courtesy, but deep down, he knew it was more. The smell of fresh bread and herbs greeted him as he entered the building. Students bustled around stainless steel counters, laughing and chatting as Juliana guided them with calm authority. She wore a white apron, her curls tied back, her face radiant in concentration. When she spotted him at the doorway, her eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Mr. Chase?" He smiled. "Tyler," he corrected softly. "I was nearby and thought I'd stop by. To thank you again. For dinner. For your time." Juliana wiped her hands on her apron, amused. "You drove across town to say thank you?" He shrugged, smiling slightly. "Maybe I needed an excuse to see how a professional kitchen works." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Well, you came to the right place. We're making artisan bread today, not exactly boardroom material." He chuckled. "You'd be surprised. Bread teaches patience, something every CEO needs." Her laughter filled the air, warm and effortless. They talked quietly as her students moved around them, about recipes, about passion, about how food connects people who've forgotten how to talk. After class, she invited him to a nearby cafe. The two of them sat by the window watching the city move around them. I can't remember the last time I sat down for coffee just to talk, Tyler admitted. Neither can I, Juliana said softly. Life's been about work and responsibilities for so long. Sometimes I forget what it's like to just be. He nodded. Me too. I spent years building walls, work, routine, silence. I thought it made me strong, but it just kept me alone. She looked at him thoughtfully. Maybe loneliness isn't weakness. Maybe it's what reminds us we're still human. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them hummed with quiet truth. Two people who had walked through different storms, meeting in the same clearing. When the check arrived, Tyler reached for it and their hands brushed. It was a small thing, but it sent a pulse through both of them, startling and strangely comforting. Outside, the evening air had cooled. The city lights shimmered against the dusky sky. Tyler walked her to her car, their steps slow, unhurried. Thank you for this, he said. For tonight. For reminding me what peace feels like. Juliana smiled faintly. You make it sound like I did something extraordinary. You did, he said quietly. You showed up. Her heart caught in her throat. It had been so long since anyone looked at her that way. Not as a teacher, not as a mother, but as a woman. But as the warmth rose, so did fear. The world he lived in, the luxury, the wealth, the attention, wasn't her world. She'd built her life on independence, on surviving alone. She couldn't risk losing herself again. Tyler, she said softly, her tone shifting. This is kind, but you don't owe me anything. You don't have to pretend I belong in your world. He frowned, taken aback. That's not what this is. I know, she said quickly, but people talk. They'll see me and think I'm just some woman who caught the attention of a billionaire. I've worked too hard for my peace to lose it now. He looked at her, his chest tightening. Juliana, I'm not asking for anything. He hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't sound like a confession. I just like being around you. She smiled sadly. And that's exactly why it scares me. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the honesty in her eyes stopped him. She wasn't rejecting him out of pride, she was protecting herself. When she said goodbye, her hand lingered briefly on his arm, then she turned and walked away. He watched her car pull out of the parking lot, the taillights fading into the evening rush. The ache in his chest deepened, not the sharp grief of loss, but the dull, uncertain pain of possibility slipping away. That night, back in the mansion, he stood on his balcony overlooking the city. The wind carried the faint hum of traffic and the scent of rain. He thought of Juliana's laughter, her eyes, her courage, and then her words replayed softly in his mind. Some people survive alone. Others are meant to heal together. He whispered the words to the night. Maybe she's right. Maybe I've been surviving too long. The city lights stretched endlessly before him, but for once he didn't feel above them. He felt small, human, alive. Somewhere across town, Juliana sat in her quiet kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Her daughter's voice echoed from upstairs, but her thoughts were far away, on a man who made her laugh again, and a feeling she wasn't sure she was brave enough to name. Neither of them slept much that night. And though neither knew it yet, the silence between them was only the pause before something life-changing began. The days slipped by like pages in a book Tyler couldn't close. The mansion was full again, florists and planners preparing for Kyla's wedding. Yet somehow, he'd never felt more alone. The laughter that echoed through the halls reminded him of everything he'd once had and lost. But what hurt more was knowing that somewhere out there, Juliana Wesley was avoiding him. Every call went unanswered. Every polite message returned with a short, distant text. She had made herself scarce since that night at her culinary school, the night she'd said she couldn't do this, couldn't risk being part of his world. He tried to respect that. He tried to focus on work, on the wedding, on anything else. But at night, when the house grew silent, her voice was still in his mind, the warmth of it, the honesty, the way she made him feel like he wasn't just Tyler Chase, billionaire, but a man again. Juliana had her reasons. At the culinary school, surrounded by students who adored her, she wore her calm like a uniform. But when she was alone, when the lights dimmed and the laughter faded, she felt the emptiness pressing against her chest. She'd told herself she did the right thing by stepping back, that men like Tyler didn't end up with women like her, that she was protecting both of them from the inevitable heartbreak that came when two worlds tried to collide. But her heart didn't believe a word of it. Every memory of him, his quiet humor, his gentleness, the way he looked at her like she was worth seeing, haunted her. It wasn't the first time she'd walked away from love, but it was the first time it truly hurt to do so. Ruby noticed. One evening, as they arranged centerpieces for Kyla's rehearsal dinner, Ruby finally said, "Mom, you've been somewhere else lately." Juliana tried to brush it off. "Just busy, honey." "Busy thinking about Kyla's dad?" Ruby's tone was knowing, gentle but sharp. Juliana froze. "Ruby, you can't lie to me," Ruby said softly. "I saw the way he looked at you, Mom, and the way you looked at him. Don't tell me it didn't mean something." Juliana exhaled. "It did. That's why I had to walk away." Ruby frowned. "Because he's rich? Because he's white? Because he's already lost someone," Juliana whispered. "And I've already been left once. We both know what it means to break. I can't be the reason someone hurts again." Ruby reached across the table, taking her mother's hand. "Or maybe you're the reason someone finally heals." The words hit harder than Juliana expected, but she stayed silent. The wedding day came glowing and perfect. The Chase estate looked like something out of a dream. Sunlight glinting off the marble terrace, white roses blooming along the path, music drifting softly through the warm Dallas air. Kyla, radiant in her gown, was everything Tyler had ever hoped his daughter would become. Strong, kind, beautiful. As he walked her down the aisle, his heart swelled with pride and an ache he couldn't quite name. He whispered, "You look just like your mother today." Kyla smiled through tears. "I learned love from you, Dad." Her words stayed with him long after she said "I do." The ceremony ended in applause, the reception alive with music and laughter. But amid the joy, Tyler's gaze caught on something, someone, across the crowd. Juliana. She stood near the edge of the garden, her champagne dress shimmering under the evening lights, her curls soft against her shoulders. The sight of her hit him like the first breath after drowning. For a long moment he didn't move. Then, as if drawn by gravity, he crossed the garden toward her. She turned when she felt his presence. "Tyler," she said, quiet surprise in her tone. "I wasn't sure you'd want me here." He smiled faintly. "It wouldn't have been the same without you." Her eyes softened. "Your daughter's wedding is beautiful. You must be so proud." "I am," he said, looking toward the dance floor where Kyla laughed in her husband's arms. "She's the best thing I ever did." There was a pause, that familiar, unspoken current between them. Then he said quietly, "You look beautiful tonight." Juliana's breath caught. "You shouldn't say that." "Why not?" "Because I came here to celebrate your daughter, not to reopen what we never finished," he interrupted gently. She turned away, flustered. "Tyler, please, it's better this way." He stepped closer. "Better for who? Both of us." "No," he said, his voice firm but calm. "It's safer this way." "Not better." Her eyes shimmered in the soft light. "You don't understand. You have a whole world built around you, a name, a legacy, expectations. I'm just—" He shook his head. "You're Juliana Wesley. The woman who walks into a room and makes it warmer. The woman who taught me that life doesn't end just because love does." She looked at him, tears threatening. "You don't know what it's like to be left behind, Tyler." His expression softened. Yes, I do. I've lived that pain for 15 years. I know what it's like to wake up and wish you hadn't loved so deeply because it hurts too much to lose it. The silence between them stretched. Only the soft music from the reception filled the air. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, I closed my heart a long time ago. I thought if I never opened it again, I'd never have to feel that kind of pain. He stepped closer, his gaze steady. And did it work? She hesitated, then shook her head. No. Then maybe it's time to try again, he said softly. Her lips trembled. Tyler, people like us don't get second chances. Maybe not, he said. But we can choose not to waste the ones we're given. The faint strains of a love song floated through the garden. Around them, laughter carried on, but neither moved. Then he extended his hand. Dance with me. She hesitated, glancing toward the guests. Someone will see. Let them, he said simply. Her hand trembled as she placed it in his. They began to sway slowly under the soft string lights, the world falling away until it was only the two of them, her head resting lightly on his shoulder, his hand pressed to the small of her back. I thought I'd never feel this again, he murmured. Me too, she whispered. When the song ended, neither stepped back. He pulled away just enough to look into her eyes. Juliana. I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to wake up tomorrow wishing I'd said this tonight. Her heart pounded. What are you saying? I'm saying, he said quietly, that I want you in my life. Not as a friend, not as a memory, but as the woman I love. She drew in a sharp breath. You can't mean that. He smiled sadly. I've meant it since the night you walked out of my kitchen. Tears filled her eyes. Tyler, I don't fit into your world. I'm not. You fit into my heart, he interrupted gently, and that's all I care about. Her resolve faltered. Why me? Because you make me feel alive again, he said simply. Because when I look at you, I don't see what's missing. I see what's possible. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, You really believe love can happen twice? I believe love never stops waiting, he replied. The tears she'd been holding back finally fell. And then, slowly, she stepped closer and rested her forehead against his chest. His arms came around her, firm and sure, pulling her into the kind of embrace that said more than words ever could. When she finally looked up at him, the question in her eyes was gone. What replaced it was peace. He smiled, a quiet, unguarded smile she hadn't seen before. Stay, he whispered. Not for tonight, for good. Her voice trembled, but she nodded. Yes. The single word broke something open between them, the years of silence, the walls built out of fear, all dissolving under the simplicity of that moment. Kyla and Ruby watched from the edge of the terrace, exchanging knowing smiles. The plan they'd hatched so innocently had somehow led two lonely hearts home. 1 year later, Tyler and Juliana now married. The Chase mansion was alive again, but this time, with laughter that wasn't borrowed from a celebration. Kayla came visiting. Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows. Tyler stood at the counter in his rolled-up sleeves, attempting to whisk pancake batter while Juliana tried not to laugh. You're supposed to fold it gently, she said, smiling. He raised an eyebrow. You say that like I'm not a professional. You're a billionaire, not a baker, she teased. Ruby and Kyla sat at the breakfast table, sipping coffee and pretending not to watch as their parents moved around each other like they'd been doing it for years. Kyla grinned. You know, I think this might be my greatest success story. Ruby laughed. You mean matchmaking two stubborn adults? Absolutely. Juliana shook her head fondly. You two are incorrigible. Tyler slipped an arm around her waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. Don't blame them, he murmured. They just gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Juliana smiled, resting a hand on his chest. And what's that? He looked at her with quiet sincerity. Hope. Outside, The morning breeze carried the scent of spring through the open windows. The house, once filled with echoes of loneliness, now thrummed with laughter and life again. Tyler glanced at the three women, his daughter, her best friend, and the woman he loved, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. He took Juliana's hand and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. Some hearts break once, but the brave ones open again. And as she leaned into him, the warmth between them said everything words couldn't. Theirs wasn't a love that began with fireworks. It began with healing. A love born not out of need but of choice. And in the quiet hum of a Dallas morning, it was clear that for Tyler Chase and Juliana Wesley, this was what forever was meant to feel like. Thank you for being part of Whispers of Hope. Your love and support mean more than words. Together we're spreading light, one whisper at a time.